From the beginning of the 2021 college football season, Nebraska was an embarrassment. It was hard to watch. This team was supposed to be Scott Frost's best team during his tenure in Lincoln. It really was. Adrian Martinez, he wasn't given the same favoritism that he was in 2019, where he was supposed to be a Heisman contending quarterback. But he was expected to take a step forward, be a better passer, and he was. The wide receivers were supposed to be better, and with the addition of Samori Toure, they were. Bigger plays in the pass game existed between the quarterback, Adrian Martinez, and wide receivers, including Toure and even outside of Samori Toure. Austin Allen at tight end really improved the tight end room. The offense overall did take a step forward. The defense did as well. Phildarius Payne had some of his moments on the defensive line that were good. At linebacker, you had Nick Heinrich and JoJo Doman and others as well. And no one can forget Cam Taylor-Britt and Nebraska's secondary that had its impressive moments. The whole team, for the most part, took a step forward, and yet the record on the field, 3-9, was Scott Frost's worst at Nebraska. And overall, it was Nebraska's worst record in, I don't even know, like over half a century. Correct me if I'm wrong down in the comments below, but I'm certain it's been 60 or more years since Nebraska has had a season relatively close to the 3-9 season they had this year in regards to record. And the reason that Nebraska failed miserably, especially in close games, every other game they won, the three, were blowouts. Now, granted, they were against Buffalo, Fordham, and Northwestern, but still, to my point, close games killed Nebraska because the positions that you need to win close games, or that certainly help, were just, they were atrocious. They were hard to watch in themselves, even excluding the rest of the team. I'm talking about the offensive line, the kicking, and punting. Those were terrible. The kicking especially was a war crime. It was unbelievable. You know, an Ohio State game is the key example. If Chase Contreras makes those two field goals, if he makes them, the game could totally have been different. And maybe that's stretching it, but it's the same with a lot of things. If Nebraska's punting unit was more effective, Nebraska doesn't lose to Michigan State. And the reason Michigan State won is because Jaden Reed returned a punt to tie the game, send it to overtime, then, Nebraska throws a pick. Whatever. My point is, small things killed Nebraska, and we can't forget about the offensive line either. Martinez improved, but it doesn't matter if your QB improves if the backbone and the thing that really determines what he can do is horrible. Martinez had, I think, a career high of sacks. He was sacked a career high times. That's not good. You cannot have that if you want to, have a winning season, especially in the defensive Big Ten West, especially there. So I'm only mentioning this for the several minutes that I am because it's important. Context is important because we're looking at Nebraska's 2022 season through this, skeptical lens. They're improving, obviously, heading on the right track, but can they get it done? And the culture, too. I mean, no one really knows what Nebraska has as an identity. Scott Frost at times looks a little worn out, but here's what's crazy. They're on the right track. They've made some hires. I think that this team, this season, if you've been following me for a while, you've heard this team is winning the West. You heard me right. This team's winning the West. And if they don't, they're likely competing for it. And if I'm wrong, so what? But that's my thoughts. I think that this team is going to win the Big Ten West. And we're going to talk about why that is exactly. First, we're going to talk about, their schedule and kind of introduce some of the basic reasons along with the schedule. And then in a few minutes, we're going to go in depth with a lot of my reasons as to why I think this team will do what I think it can and, in my opinion, will do. So Nebraska, they made some hires. They're doing well in the transfer portal. And a funny thing is, if this goes bad, and it's not really funny if you're a Nebraska fan, if the season goes south, Nebraska's future is put even more in jeopardy because Scott Frost totally sacrificed recruiting for this year to focus on the portal and get instant results. To me, that's a reason why they actually will have some success, is because I think getting guys that are developed by other programs and have a more winning mentality, who haven't been bludgeoned by constantly losing, can come in and inject some energy. It's kind of the same logic with his hires of many successful Power 5, coordinators, hiring Mickey Joseph from LSU, who of course helped the team win a national title, hiring a TCU running backs coach who is a good recruiter, and TCU's obviously, had more success even in Gary Patterson's worse recent years than Scott Frost has had at Nebraska. A lot of these things coming together, just putting Nebraska even more in a right direction. But if this does go wrong, the poor recruiting class of this year, high school recruiting class, could really hurt Nebraska down the road. So it is a boomer bust year. It is critical that Scott Frost, and not just Scott Frost, but Nebraska get it done this year, that they get some momentum so that they can go out and recruit and do well to compensate for this season. Because this season does honestly, especially that recruiting class, which is 41st in the nation, put their future in potential jeopardy. So the incoming transfers, the staff, the new staff on offense, particularly Mark Whipple as the OC, who is actually going to be calling plays now, taking over play calling duties from Scott Frost, and Mickey Joseph, the wide receivers coach, the passing game coordinator, and the associate head coach. Those are a lot of my reasons. Another one that I'll be talking about later is that while some media outlets may be favoring this team, your average person is going to dismiss this team right off the bat. So a chip on their shoulder might be another factor that helps them win. But we'll talk about that later. I think it's important to look at their schedule first, which is another advantage that they have. As August the 27th, they open up with Northwestern. Now, they lost to Illinois in their opener in 2021. But Northwestern is a mess. This past season, they went 3-9, finished 1-8. They lose probably their best player on the team in safety Brandon Joseph to Notre Dame. And I think that this will be a win. Nebraska, they have more talent. I think that the coordinators they've hired means you could make an argument that their coaching staff might be the better coaching staff, though there's no way you could tell me that Scott Frost is a better head coach than Pat Fitzgerald at this current moment. I think Nebraska will win this game. They have a better offense, better defense, and with some, again, transfers, they'll probably have better special teams as well. Just an overall better unit. They also have an easy game. Nebraska does 2 in a row, hosting North Dakota on September 3rd and Georgia Southern on September 10th. Those should be easy wins. So 3-0 heading into the Oklahoma matchup, a matchup that is very critical. If this matchup is lost, then either A, Oklahoma is a playoff team, or B is the more likely reason, this team is not going to win the West, or it is going to underperform just in general, regardless of what I say or others say. This game is important for momentum, for confidence, because you're going to be facing a ranked opponent, very likely a ranked opponent, an opponent with good talent. They're going to likely have Dylan Gabriel, Oklahoma will at QB, so a good QB as well. If Nebraska beats this team, Nebraska can beat nearly anyone else on their schedule, at least in the West Division. So they can beat all the opponents that matter when it comes to a potential quest at reaching Indy. And I think they will. I think that Nebraska is going to show themselves to the world. They're going to shock the world, and they're going to beat Oklahoma, September 17th. They then have a bye the 24th before the Huskers return home to face Indiana on homecoming October 1st. This game, I think, will be a win. Same with Friday, October 7th, facing off against Rutgers. This will be an away game, but I still think that Nebraska is in a better position as a roster than Rutgers is. Traveling to Purdue will not be an easy task, though. This will be the 15th of October. Purdue, they have Aiden O'Connell. They know how to develop talent, specifically offensively. This game will probably be a shootout, but again, Nebraska does have better talent. I think that this will be a game where you probably get to see either one of the coordinators in Eric Chinander or Mark Whipple specifically shine, and them being the reason the Huskers win this game. So this would make it 7-0. I think Nebraska is going to start similarly to how Michigan State started the year in 2021. So after the bye on the 22nd, I think that Nebraska will beat Illinois. This will be a home game. They're going to be looking for revenge from last year's humiliating early season loss. The matchup against Minnesota on November 5th will determine the West. And despite Minnesota being a tough team defensively and having a solid run game, being what Wisconsin overall really used to be, at least before 2020, I think that the Huskers will win because of superior QB play, and they themselves have a solid defense. At Michigan will be the Huskers' first loss. This will be November 12th. Michigan's just too good all around. They're the first team that has an outright talent advantage over Nebraska. And if Nebraska is ranked, Michigan's going to take them seriously, especially if they're 9-0 entering this game like I think they will be. This will be the first loss. Wisconsin will also be tough. This will be a home game, though, thankfully, and mainly as a result of that. Outside of that, these two teams match up very well with each other. I think that this will be a Husker win. At Iowa will be the final game, a game that Iowa always has a mental edge in, seemingly. Iowa has a very good defense, specifically secondary, which I think will work well against Nebraska having a better passer in Casey Thompson, and because of that, I think that Iowa will win this game. Nebraska will be 10-2. Now, my prediction, again, is just a prediction. It's all it is. It's what I think. You can agree, you can disagree. It's just a prediction. But I think with the easier schedule, and if you look at a lot of these opponents that Nebraska faces, a lot of them are suffering from attrition, and Nebraska is too. Nebraska's losing a lot. I think they're like second to last in the Big Ten in returning production. But they bring in so many transfers, specifically at QB, which was the position that lost the most production, that had the most production, and a lot of these other teams don't. Like Purdue, they don't bring in nearly the same amount of transfers, and they have to replace David Bell and George Karlaftis. Illinois, they're barely utilizing the portal, and they lose even more production than Nebraska does. Minnesota, they lose their entire offensive line outside of their center. They lose the majority of their defense. They lose, their co-defensive coordinator to Rutgers. And then some of these other teams, just Nebraska, they're really set up well for success just by their schedule. But that's all I'm going to say about the schedule. I think you've gotten enough of a breakdown and enough of my thoughts on that. So now we're going to move on to my reasons as to why I think specifically this team will win the West. It is a boom or bust year. Number 12 transfer portal class in the nation, but only the number 41 recruiting class. Again, if this season is a failure, Nebraska's future for the next coach is very behind. If Scott Frost fails this year and is fired, the next coach's progress is going to be hindered by this recruiting class that was one of the worst in the Big Ten. That's a very short point to make, though. The offense should improve, though, under Whipple's guidance. Scott Frost is no longer calling the plays, and he made some very questionable play calls this year. I remember one of them, the Ohio State game again, that was the game that told me that this team was going to at least I think, do something good or great this season. They were just too competitive with Ohio State to be ignored in the future. That was a game that was pretty solidly coached, actually. But there were still some errors. Martinez running him, I think, on 3rd and long against an Ohio State D-line that was just destroying Martinez all day was one of them, and there are many others as well that Nebraska fans specifically can point out. The point is Scott Frost is he's spread too thin, and he was for these past 4 years. Lighting his load and having Whipple call the plays can help him during spring practice, during summer and fall, maybe build a better culture, build a more winning mindset, help him be less stressed, be happier, improve the team mood. And if you think that's funny, like that, team mood and morale and many other things don't affect a team, it totally does. It absolutely does. If a coach is too thinly spread, he's not going to be as focused as he should be on some of the duties that he specifically should be carrying out. And Mark Whipple is a good OC. He's also going to be coaching the quarterbacks, and we all know what he did with Kenny Pickett. This offense will take a step forward. And the O-line specifically, I think, it won't be great. It might not even be good, but it won't be as bad as it was this year. It was one of the worst in the Big Ten. It'll improve under Donovan Raiola. The defense will continue the upward trend as well. Nebraska return Nick Heinrich specifically, and they also return a few other guys too. They return tight end Travis Vokalek, who is going through surgery on the offseason, but he should be a solid option at tight end. Omar Manning, a wide receiver, returns as well. He's on offense, though. Caleb Tanner, a linebacker, returns. You also have Luke Reimer as well, so plenty of linebackers return. Farmer, the safety, returns as well. There's more losses for this coming season than the past season when it comes to production on defense, but Eric Chenander's units just get better and better as the year goes on. You have incoming transfers like Omar Brown at cornerback that will help the departure of Cam Taylor-Britt and a large portion of the secondary. And this defense will do well. Again, like many things, I don't think this defense will be a top 2 defense. It won't be like, let's just say, probably like Wisconsin's. Maybe it will. This defense will be good, though. Maybe great, and maybe they'll prove me wrong. The more I think about it, I think that this defense could really be one of the best in the Big Ten. The new staff, and I already touched on this, but overall, the new staff, the transfer portal players, they target past weaknesses. And that includes not having a winning mindset. Nebraska got a kicker and also a guy who can punt from Furman. He is a specialist, so he can kick and he can punt. And he's very good. I forget his name off the top of my head, but he, was one of the better kickers and punters in the FCS. Correct me if I'm wrong. It'll certainly be an improvement over Connor Culp and Chase Contreras at kicking. The Furman guy was specifically recruited to be a kicker. So that's an example of the transfer portal. They also brought in offensive tackle Hunter Anthony from Oklahoma State, and that is, again, specifically targeting weaknesses on the offensive line. So those are just some examples. They also are using it to target some of their strengths, like getting Omar Brown in at secondary from the portal, and going back to weaknesses, the whole quarterback situation. Bringing in Casey Thompson and Chubba Purdy, that's targeting a weakness, because Martinez being like the sole guy, the only guy, honestly, that's what he was. No one else was truly challenging him, was not healthy. So having multiple QBs that have potential to start, like Logan Smothers, Chubba Purdy, Casey Thompson, Heinrich Haarburg, I think is the other guy's name. Correct me if I'm wrong again. You have 4 guys who, according to many different Husker websites and other websites, sports websites, can contend for the starting job. And final 2 points. Nebraska avoids playing Ohio State and Michigan State, and I'm just skipping over the Scott Frost one because it's simple. Nebraska only faces Michigan. They do not face Ohio State. They do not face Michigan State. Instead, Nebraska faces Indiana and Rutgers, which are going to be far worse opponents than Ohio State and Michigan State will be. So the schedule eases up, helps them bring some momentum, which is very important again. But finally, the point that I want to end off on is Scott Frost was not extended to go 6-7, 7-6, or even 8-5. He wasn't. He was not. That was what they were supposed to be this year, was a 6-7, 7-6, maybe 8-5 program. And they showed it in many of their close matchups with top 10 teams. They showed that if you change a few plays, this team might have been ranked at some point in the year. But no, they went 3-9 and utterly embarrassed themselves, specifically in the Iowa game. So you better know that Scott Frost was extended to probably go 9-4, maybe 8-5 will be acceptable, but he was extended to boom or bust, to really prove himself. Not just incremental improvement. There has to be a jump, like a big climb, like the climb that you get on the Dragster or the Millennium Force at Cedar Point. Like that kind of climb is what Nebraska has to have for Scott Frost to have job security and stability this season. So Frost will be all in, the staff will be all in, everything I think will be all in, which is going to be very important from a culture standpoint. Again, this might sound ridiculous, but I think Nebraska, the West, is theirs, with Iowa and Wisconsin having questionable QB play. Casey Thompson, Chubba Purdy, Logan Smothers, on the other hand, are better QBs than Spencer Petras and Graham Mertz. In saying that, Purdue could also contend. I'm very much a guy who favors offensive teams, but I just think that Nebraska, it's their time to shine. They have to break through at some point, and if they don't, then it is what it is, and I just made an incorrect prediction, and will, make predictions again every year. You get some wrong, you get some right. And that's all I'm going to say for this video. If you liked it, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell, and comment your thoughts down below. Do you think Nebraska has a shot to win the Big Ten West? If you do, or if you don't, tell me why in the comments below, and we can have an awesome college football discussion surrounding that. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you guys around. Bye.